Good morning. Welcome to News and Views with the Mayor. We have a lot of exciting things going on in downtown Douglasville. Glad to see each and every one of you here this morning. And let me give you kind of a brief overview of some of the things that we have going on that are really exciting in Douglasville. We recently had a ribbon cutting with the Work Ready program. And you might ask, what is the Work Ready program? Well, the Work Ready program is a collaborative effort between the city, the county, and the Chamber of Commerce. And our chamber recently received a $10,000 grant. And the purpose of that grant is to help the county make sure that we have a ready workforce so that we can work to put people back to work and get them into jobs that we'll be having in the future. Also, we have another exciting thing that's going on, and that is Google. Google Get America's Business Online, or better known as GABO, is going to have a special event on June the 20th at the center. We'll have over 200 local businesses that'll have the opportunity to work with Google to get a free website instruction. Now, what exactly is this? A lot of businesses are starting out. They don't have a website. They don't have the expertise. They don't know how to really set up their own website. Google is in our community, and they have volunteered to help the local businesses set up or show them how to set up their own website, which will help them market their businesses throughout the internet and throughout Douglas County, the nation, and even the world. So that is really an exciting thing that we have going on. It's a great opportunity. You'll be hearing more news about that. And remember, the date is June the 20th. It's going to be at the center, which is right downtown Douglasville, located off of Douglas Boulevard. Another exciting thing that we have going on is our loss negotiations. Loss negotiations. What does LOSS stand for? LOSS stands for Local Option Sales Tax. Every 10 years after the census, the city and the county have to renegotiate the distribution of the local option sales tax revenues that are generated from the sales of goods here in Douglas County. We're in the process of that negotiation. There's been some give and take on both sides. It's a very complicated process. It's determined by population, service delivery, a lot of things that go into that negotiation. But there's been a very good effort between the city and the county to work together on the negotiations of that process. And hopefully you're going to see some very exciting things that we'll be announcing from a meeting that we're going to have jointly with the county on May the 29th. So stay tuned for those things. And today we have a very special guest with us. We have one of our two U.S. Senators, and that is Johnny Isakson, with us here today in the studio, along with special guest, our county chairman of the Board of Commissioners, Tom Wortham. So please stay tuned. We have some exciting things to follow, and we'll be right back with you. Thank you.
All right, we welcome you to the Douglas County Courthouse. We're here tonight. It's the joint meeting of the Douglas County and Douglasville governments, and we're explaining some of the projects that are on the TIA list. And we want the public to be informed as to what projects that might be built if this does pass. And Mayor, we have a good crowd out here tonight.
Yes, Chairman, we really do, and it's exciting to see this many people that are here tonight that want to get the information, get informed. The chairman is actually the chair of ARC's Transportation Committee and has put forth a lot of hard work to get the TIA bill out there so we can vote on it July the 31st.
Absolutely.
And I'm also sitting on the Transportation Committee, and we wanted to make sure that the citizens of Douglasville, Douglas County had the information, had the facts, so that they could make an informed decision on the upcoming referendum, which will be July the 31st.
That's right. And Mayor, we are having another joint meeting. Would you talk about that at the Downtown Convention Center?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, that's going to be June the 11th at the Downtown Convention Center. It'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. We'd like to invite you to come out. If you're not sure about the information, come help us to help you get informed and make sure that you can make a good, educated decision on the ballot July the 31st. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to News and Views and the news portion of News and Views with the Mayor. Glad to have you joining us today. Very fortunate to have with us today Senator Johnny Isakson. Senator, glad to have you with us.
Great to be with you.
And also we have our chairman of the Douglas County Commission with us, Tom Wortham. Glad to have you with us today, Chairman.
Good to be with you.
And before we get into our interview process, I'd like to thank the Senator for the town hall meeting that we just finished up, that you'll be able to see portions of on CITI TV. We had a very good turnout today, and the Senator answered a lot of questions and gave us a lot of great information, and we're having this interview right on the back of that to be able to just get more information from the Senator and get him to tell us a little bit about what's going on in Washington. But before we do that, I'd like to read to you just a little bit about our Senator, give you a little bit of his bio, and let you know how fortunate we are to have him serving us in Washington. It says here that Johnny Isakson, our Senator, began his business career in 1967 when he opened the first Cobb County office of a small family-owned real estate business, which was Northside Realty. The Senator later served as president of Northside Realty for 20 years, presiding over the company's growth into the largest independent residential and real estate brokerage company in the Southeast and one of the largest in America. Senator Isakson entered politics in 1974 and served for 17 years in the Georgia legislature and 2 years as chairman of the Board of Education. In 1999, Senator Isakson was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives for the first of 3 terms before being elected to the U.S. Senate, where he currently serves. He was elected in 2004. So you can see the Senator has a lot of accomplishments. He's been married to his wife, I believe. He's going to elaborate on that a little bit for us, but 41 years?
44 years.
44.
That's my biggest accomplishment.
Every time I have the good fortune to introduce the Senator, I either get the number of grandkids wrong or now I've got the number of years that he's been married to his lovely wife. But Senator, we're glad to have you today and want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Washington. And I see here also, talk a little bit about some of the committees that you're on in Washington. You serve on the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. You serve on the Committee for Science and Transportation, and I might add, transportation makes you over the Port of Savannah, is that correct?
That's correct. Commerce Committee.
Commerce Committee, which is our largest port. He's also on the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. He's on the Senate Committee of Ethics. And as you can see, Senator is quite busy with all that he has going on in Washington, not to mention coming home, being with us, his local constituents. Senator, I've said enough, and I want to open it up to you for comments, and then I'm going to ask our chairman to chime in, and at any time he might have some questions. But if you would, just elaborate on some of the hot buttons that are going on with some of these different committees that you're on and how they impact our local community, if you would, please.
Well, I'm delighted to be with you, Mayor, and I want to add one thing to the resume that I should have in there that didn't. I opened the first Northside Realty office in Douglas County on Thornton Road about 25 years ago. So we've done business in Douglas County for a long time and appreciate your leadership and the chairman's leadership. It's a great community.
Thank you, sir.
And that was a great turnout today, and they asked just about every tough question that could be asked, a very educated electorate, and I was honored to be here today. In terms of what I'm doing in Washington, the single biggest thing for our state is the Port of Savannah. In 2014, the Panama Canal will be opened and widened to take on the big Panamex ships. They'll not be able to come into the Port of Savannah because they dredge more than 43 feet at the keel. We've got to deepen the channel by 5 feet. We've had it approved since 1999, but have been in environmental litigation and environmental conformity ever since then. We're at the cusp of the final approval, which we think will come on November 20th, and we want to get that started and funded so the biggest ships in the world can come to Savannah, Georgia, beginning in 2015. The Port of Savannah and Hartsfield International Airport are the two biggest assets our state has. You can get anywhere in the world from Hartsfield, and you can get any product in the world through the Port of Savannah. They drive the economy of our entire state. So my job is about jobs. The thing I know the American people and the people of Georgia want the most right now is jobs. The Port of Savannah at its current depth generates 295,000 jobs. They estimate the deepening of it to 47 feet will add another 50,000 jobs. It is a huge contributor to Georgia's economy and something we're working on very hard. Unfortunately, we're not working on some things we ought to be working on, like cutting spending, like getting the budget balanced, like doing some of the things that people want us to do. And hopefully this election is going to send a message to Washington for us to do what the people of Douglas County have had to do, and that's sit around their kitchen table, prioritize their expenditures, and live within their income. That's what I'm working on.
Well, Senator, we're very fortunate to have you up there, and like you said, with the Port of Savannah, it brings jobs to the economy, but we're very fortunate here in Douglasville to be within 20 to 30 minutes of the busiest international airport in the world. And that gives us an opportunity to be able to play off of that and then get jobs from it also. Chairman, do you have any questions you'd like to ask the Senator?
Yes, I do. The Senator serves on the Transportation Committee and as chair of TAQC at the Atlanta Regional Commission, and the mayor's a member of that committee as well. I know the Senate passed a transportation bill. I think it was a 5-year bill, Johnny, worth about $290 billion. But after it left the Senate, I think there's going to be nothing that's going to happen in the House. Could you tell us a little bit about what's happening? I know there's been an extension for the current transportation legislation. Well, overall, what's going to happen with transportation?
In Washington, we have two processes to spend money. One is called an authorization to spend. That's when Congress passes a bill that authorizes up to whatever, $200 billion be spent on whatever project. Then you have the appropriations process. But you can't appropriate that which you don't authorize. We've gone through 4 straight years of kicking the can down the road on the highway bill. The trust fund has been underfunded for 4 years, and we haven't done a reauthorization. And this is very disappointing for me right now because the Senate came together. I believe there was 82 votes for the bill in the Senate and 17 votes against. That's a pretty strong majority, voting for a 5-year extension and reauthorization, which would have provided hundreds of billions of dollars for road construction and maintenance and upkeep of bridges and runways in the United States. And those are big job producers and job creators. Unfortunately, the politics of the trust fund and the politics of an election year for presidency got tied up in the House, and I'm afraid we're not going to get the reauthorization done until next year. But our country needs a vibrant highway system and transportation system. Since Dwight Eisenhower created the interstate system, which originally was designed to be able to evacuate all the major cities in the country in case of a nuclear attack, but it became the heart or the backbone of the American transportation system and trucking and vacations and tourism and everything else. America has depended on the automobile and the surface transportation to meet its needs. We need to make sure it's modernized, our bridges are safe, our roads are wide enough, and our signalization makes it safe for them to travel on.
Another couple of things I'd like for you to expound on, if you would, Senator, is you sitting on the committees as it relates to education, foreign relations, and veterans affairs. All of those are very important issues, and there were some questions asked next door earlier this afternoon. But if you could, talk to us a little bit about health care. Where do you think health care is going in the country? And then, if you could, then go into some comments about education, where we are with No Child Left Behind and some of those things.
Well, in terms of health care, we're all waiting on the Supreme Court to give us their decision. They voted the Friday after the hearings in Washington, but nobody will know what that vote was until they write their dissenting and affirmative positions on the Affordable Care Act, or what's been more commonly called as Obamacare. There's a challenge constitutionally that the individual mandate in the health care bill violates the Commerce Clause. A lot of people whose opinions I value, and I'm not an attorney or a constitutional lawyer, agree that that's probably unconstitutional and the court might throw it out. But there's a lot of the legislation that's strictly legislation and not a constitutional test that probably will be upheld. So we're going to find ourselves entering next year, or really entering the debate for president this November, with health care being probably the #1 or 2 issue in the United States. We do have a problem with accessible, affordable health care in America. We do have a problem with accessible health insurance to millions of Americans, and we ought to do something about it. I didn't vote for the health care bill as it passed because it was an individual mandate that put government in charge of your health care and really took the competition factor out of it, and quite frankly, the quality factor out of it. I would rather do what Paul Ryan from Wisconsin has recommended, and that is provide incentives on a means-tested basis to help subsidize insurance premiums and let you pick the policy, the doctor, and the provider that you want. That'll bring about more competition and more knowledge, and at the same time help government to be able to capitate its cost. In terms of No Child Left Behind, I have a personal investment in that. I helped write it. I chaired Georgia's State Board of Education for 2 years under Governor Miller. No Child Left Behind has worked. It accomplished raising the test scores and raising the ability of children, free and reduced lunch kids, our poorest inner city kids, to be able to perform better. But it also, as we measured their adequate yearly progress, which was the benchmark, we made it tougher to meet every year. So a lot of schools fell into needs improvement when they were really improving. So it kind of sent the wrong signal. The president has not been wanted to bring it forward yet for a reauthorization. Arne Duncan, the Secretary of Education, to his credit, has begun issuing waivers to states from No Child Left Behind that have reached the ceiling on AYP, and I hate to use acronyms, but Washington is always full of them. But and Georgia got one of the first waivers on the new index system, and I commend Superintendent Barge and the members of the State Board of Education. They've got a new benchmark to measure performance of the schools and the children, so every parent and every voter will know how their schools are performing and how the individual child is performing and whether or not they are testing at grade level, and that's a big improvement.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you another question, and we've talked about that jobs is very critical to our economy. It's certainly very critical to our local economy. But one of the things that's facing us is the glut of housing that's out there. I know that I guess Congress passed legislation that I guess you drafted or authored, and that was about the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission. Right. And if I can expand a little bit, you and I have had some discussion before about the Glass-Steagall Act that was passed after the last, I guess,
1999.
Okay, well, they, I guess, repealed it then.
Repealed it in 1999.
Repealed it. They passed it, I guess, after the first crisis that we had, the Depression, right. And then it stayed in effect for, gosh, what, 30 years or better, maybe 40 years.
Almost 40.
40 years, and then we came along and repealed it. And there's a lot of conversation out there that maybe that had some effect on some of the banking crisis, but I know that you now are looking at some laws that we can put in place that will hopefully keep that from happening again. Can you address that, and then how you think that will affect the glut of housing that we have out there now?
Well, and I always like to be candid, so let me start off by saying I voted for the repeal of Glass-Steagall, and in hindsight, we probably didn't do the right thing. We thought we were. That's what the whole, I mean, it was a 423-3 vote in the U.S. House of Representatives. But what we forgot about was we tore down the firewall between the producer of credit and the beneficiary of credit. So companies began to vertically integrate. Wall Street brokerage companies bought banks, who bought insurance companies, who bought private mortgage insurance companies. And the next thing you know, you had monolithic, huge, interrelated, vertically integrated financial companies that made money internally off selling financing and making products that they had the legal ability to do so. It's kind of like in Georgia, we have a 3-tiered system on liquor. You can sell it, You can brew it or you can distribute it, but you can only do one. Somebody else has to do the other two. And that's to be the firewall for protection and security. We lost that with the repeal of Glass-Steagall, and then what happened is Wall Street got in the business of securitizing residential mortgages. The government got in the business of guaranteeing them, and that worked fine for a long period of time. But then a new product was created called subprime paper, B, C, and D credits, meaning people whose credit reports were not that stellar, who could normally not have borrowed to buy a house. They started making subprime mortgage loans to people and sold them and securitized them, and those securities went bad when the loans went bad, and that caused the collapse of the financial system. That's an overly simple answer, but it happens to be the truth. And we are left, this morning's paper said we're down to 65% home ownership from a high of 69% in 4 years, and it's going to continue to decline, I think, personally. We've got a 11-year supply of developed lots on the market that aren't selling, and we've still got a lot of houses built in 06 and 07 that have been foreclosed on that still haven't sold. And until that washes through the system, you're going to continue to have a depressed housing market in certain markets. Certain markets are coming back. But you hit on the key, Mayor. The key to solving the housing glut is solving the job problem. You give a man a job and he'll buy a house. Right. You give a family income and they'll raise a family. We still are at 8.2 or 8.3% unemployment. And the government overly regulatory environment with Dodd-Frank and some of the things that have passed in Congress are suppressing capital investment and growth and expansion by business, and technology is replacing the worker in a lot of areas where productivity has gone up, but that means jobs are going down. So I spend most of every day in Washington concentrating on what I can do to help make the environment and the climate for new jobs better and better and better, like the Port of Savannah, like the highway bill. Job-creating legislation ought to be job one for the Congress.
You're right there, Senator, and that's something that the chairman and I both agree on, that we feel that our role is to help facilitate an environment that will then help create jobs. We don't feel that the government should be creating the jobs. We feel that we should be facilitating an environment that will then help facilitate job growth. And the chairman and I we've had a good working relationship, and I'm excited to have him here today. Glad to have you here. I know we're approaching the close, but like I said, just wanted to again tell you thank you for being here. You have a stellar background. We're very proud to have you up there representing Georgia. You represent us well, and we're thankful for that. We know that you do it to quite a bit of sacrifice of your time and family time with your wife and grandchildren, but we appreciate it and recognize the efforts.
I'm blessed to be an American, as are all of us. I'm privileged to be able to represent the people of Georgia. I'm a big fan of Douglas County and Douglasville, and I don't say that because I'm here. I say that because I've been here often and I come back often. You've got great leadership in government. Your sheriff, who I met with earlier, is doing a fantastic job. Your police chief in Douglasville is doing a great job. And your local Board of Education, Ed Murray and all the folks that have been so much to build education. It's just a pleasure to be in Douglasville and Douglas County.
Thank you, Senator. Glad to have you, and you come back at any time. Thank you. Have a great day.